Yeah, let's get started. So, Liz, come on visually, and we will introduce you and introduce us. Hello,
Hello.
Liz. Hey.
Hi guys.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Thea from Horse Tribe and HorseFest, our annual festival, and Heidi is above me tonight, but
Hello.
maybe elsewhere on your screen. So, welcome to another evening with the Horse Tribe. Tonight it's with Liz Daniels. This is her fourth? Wow.
Third.
Third.
Yeah, third webinar, and we've learned so much every time. And this time it's clipping made easy. We love a bit of tips and tricks on stress-free clipping. Which is going to be wonderful. So Liz will tell you a bit more about herself, but first of all, we have a tech bit from Heidi.
Yeah, you've probably heard this all before. So just for a little reminder for tonight, we're going to be not going to be using the chat at the bottom of your screen. We're going to be using the Q&A for questions. So if you've got a question at any point, just tap it away and type that in, and Liz will pause at several occasions to ask questions. If you want to ask the question rather than typing it, just click on the raise hand, and when we get to a question time, we'll just unmute you and you can ask the question straight to Liz. You can move the little silver bar left or right if you want Liz to be larger or smaller, or slides to be larger or smaller. And just to let you know, as always, we're recording the webinar so you can watch it back whenever you'd like. So I think that's it in terms of tech. So we'll move on and we'll let Liz introduce herself properly. So thank you, Liz.
We'll see you in a bit.
Thank you. Hi guys. Those of you that have been on webinars with me before will hopefully remember me, but also know that I love questions, so I quite like it to be interactive. So if you have a question at any point, please do just use the ways that Heidi said, because we love it to be interactive. I want you to leave this webinar having learned something and feel a little bit more confident. So before we start, a little bit about me. I am a former professional groom, absolutely love working with horses. I've done a lot of clipping, lucky enough to present at Your Horse Live with the Clip Shop team, doing the clipping in the demo arenas. Have clipped literally thousands of horses, so I do feel like I'm well prepared to speak to you guys. In my day job now, I work for the British Grooms Association, so I do a lot of social media, marketing, PR, comms. Love to chat, so that's fine. I work with Riders Minds as well, doing the same role, all their comms and social media. I'm quite passionate about that. And then my best friend and I, Lou, run Equity and Confidence camps, so I'm also a coach as well. So coming at you from quite a few different angles. As it says here, I live in Scotland with my family and have 3 horses currently at home. Only one is clipped, but the other one's getting clipped tomorrow. So the one that was clipped Betsy, that's my daughter's horse, and she was clipped especially for this demo. So we'll see a little bit more of her in a moment. So before we start, we've got here that it's a quick quiz, but maybe just something for you guys to think about rather than having to do a quiz. When it comes to clipping, do you clip like a pro? Are you winging it? Do you get someone else to do it for you? Or maybe your horse doesn't get clipped and you're a little bit unsure where to start. Whatever the answer is, it doesn't really matter. You're here to learn and to hopefully be educated and feel confident. A lot of people I speak to feel like number 2, like they're winging it and that they're kind of doing it, but it's not great. And hopefully if you're in that category, or if you're in category number 3 and 4, you'll also feel a little bit more confident to go and give it a go and a little better prepared. If you're clipping like a pro, then feel free to butt in at any time and say, oh, actually I do it like this, because everyone has different techniques and really it's what works for you guys as well. So we've got a mixture of me talking, a few videos which we've not used before in this format, so hopefully they work, and lots of pictures and lots of these slides as well. So the first thing is, what clippers do you use? And it really depends on how many you're clipping, how often you clip, and the type of hair. I've put on here tension because now some of the other clippers that you get have preset tension, so you don't need to tension. So your tension is how tight the blades are together. So your clippers are made up of 2 different blades, and one of them is stationary and the other runs backwards and forwards. And the tension is the gap between those two blades. And on some clippers, some machines, people find it quite tricky. Other people obviously get on just fine. And budget is, you know, you have to be realistic. If you're just clipping one horse a few times a year, you don't need necessarily a really full-on powerful machine. So here on the left, we've got there's lots of machines, and we're by no way affiliated with Liveryman. I like Liveryman, as I've just said to the ladies before, but this is just as a conversation opener. So these ones on the left are their Black Beauties, and the Black Beauties are, you can see on the right of those have a battery pack, but you can also use them off the mains as well. These are what we call a heavy duty clipper. So if you're clipping lots and they're quite hairy, or the hair is coarse, so for example like a big hairy cob, that kind of thing, you're probably going to need something a little bit more heavy duty. The ones on the right of that are the Harmony Plus, so they've got the preset tension, so you don't need to do anything with them. They're cheaper than the other ones. You can clip fully, but if you were doing I don't know, like a trace clip or a bib clip, and you were clipping 2 to 3 times a year and you clip slowly, these would be absolutely perfect. But if you want to go and clip a yard, the ones on the right are not designed to do that job. And then down from that, you've got the trimmers as well, which we will look a bit more into at our next session that we do about clipping, and when we talk all about the blending and different things like that. But for what we're talking about today, we want a kind of a heavy duty type or a medium duty. So really it depends on yeah, how many you're clipping, how often, and the type of hair. If you want to do thick hairy cob hair on legs, for example, then you know something with a little bit more power will do that for you. So what kind of clip? These are the basic kind of clips. Because I like to go against the grain, the clip that I'm doing doesn't really have a name that we're going to show you later on, but it's a variation between you see, I think on the chaser clip it normally goes to the stifle, so the one I've done is a cross between a chaser and a blanket clip. I'm not sure what we'll call it a Liz clip for tonight, but you can see there's lots of varieties in there, lots of different ones. I personally think that you should take as little as you can get away with off the horse, and anytime they get hairy is a good time to clip. Other people clip all year round, but now is a really great time to clip. It was used to be said that you shouldn't clip after the second week in January, but really it depends on the coat, when the new coat starts to come in and the change of the hair and things. And the only reason that is because people used to say it damages the summer coat. I don't actually think it does, but having said that, I don't tend to clip like past February myself, just because I don't, you know, I don't think you need to. But for horses that are living out full time, a full clip is probably not going to be for you. For horses in light to medium work, something like the trace or the chaser clip is absolutely perfect. If you've got a particularly hairy horse, you know, a bib, chaser, that kind of clip would be brilliant for the start. And then if you want to avoid all the terrible molting, then just, you know, you can give them a hunter type clip at the end of the season just to get the hair off. But whatever we take off with the clippers, we need to make sure that we replace with a rug so they don't get cold. And the reason for clipping, as I'm sure everyone knows, is just to stop the sweat. So really, if you take the hair away from the bits under the belly, under your girth and the neck, that's going to stop the problem that you have of them waiting for them to dry. So it's your preference, but I would always say less is more. So if you do have a clip and you find that it's not working, you can always take more off, whereas if you completely make them naked, you can't put more on. So always, you know, think, I'll just take a little bit off, and we'll get onto lines, because we've all been guilty of just thinking, oh, just straighten this line, and what starts as a trace clip ends up as a full clip because you keep going higher and higher. But we'll come onto how to do the lines later. I'm a great believer that they need time in the field, and if you know you work full time, you can't always get them in if a snow shower or whatever comes, so you need to make sure that they're covered, and that really for me is leaving a half a head, the legs, and something over the bum, so you know, just to give them a little bit of extra protection. Having said that, if you were off to hoys or anything, then I'd be saying to you, let's take the hair off. So it has to be fit for purpose for what you guys want as well. So before we get too excited, so we've chosen our clippers, we've decided what clip we're going to make sure that we've got our rugs sorted, sharp blades and service clippers. Obviously, if you've just bought a new set of clippers, they will be totally fine and your blades will be sharp, but always have a spare set of blades, because the amount of times that you might drop a set of clippers and a tooth on the blades breaks, or I don't know, your blades go blunt halfway through, it's so useful to have a second set of blades. You get different lengths in the blade, so traditionally we clip with a medium blade, which if you use the liveryman is known as an A2 size, but you can get fine blades, so they take a closer cut, and then your coarse blades, and Lister also do one that's called a cover cut, which is just to take all the capped hairs off as well. But you standard, well, your Heiniger comes with fine blades, but your liveryman and Lister and all the others, they come with medium blades as standard. If you've got a grey, do not clip with fine blades unless you are very good at clipping, because it looks horrendous, like really bad. So I would say always go for your medium or your coarse, depending on what you're doing. But again, you'll be able to Google whatever your make of clipper is, what the standard is with that. Make sure you've got clipper oil. Always use the oil that the manufacturer recommends, and the reason for saying that is not because I'm trying to give them more money, but things like WD-40 and that kind of stuff, it just doesn't keep them lubricated. The oil that is, you know, for those clippers is designed for those clippers, and it really does make a difference. Clean dry horse, we'll come on to the clean horse in a minute, but it's really important, and safety for me is the most vital thing of all, because clipping as a horse owner is one of the most dangerous things that you will do to your horse, because of how you're moving around the horse, and not all horses, you know, enjoy that. So here we've got dirty coats, so you've got to brush your horse, and it's really tricky at this time of year because they throw up a lot of grease where they've been changing their coats, but it's really worth investing an hour just to give your horse a really good brush. So if it's dirty, you can see on this horse here, who's actually, it's not one of mine, it's been clipped by a professional who's exceptionally good, but you can see all the lines over the horse, and that's because no matter how good you are, it's blunting the blades and you're getting all those lines in the coat, and it's really uncomfortable for the horse because it starts to pull at the hair as well, and it's one of the reasons that horses become quite sensitive to clipping if they have a bad experience. So it really cannot stress, they've got to be clean and they've got to be dry. So if you can't bath them the day before, and obviously this time of year it's not always practical, brush them, like really thoroughly brush them. Hot cloth them, so you pop a little bit, the water as hot as you can touch, pop a little bit of either Dettol to lift the grease, baby oil, or I quite like Super Shine, which is from Smart Grooming as well. You get a code for that at the end, a 10% discount off that. Pop them in the bucket, get like a cloth, like a microfiber, wring it out really well, and then give them a really good circular motion, especially over the bum and the crest where they might be dirty. And then just before you're about to clip, give them a good spray, a layer of coat shine all over the coats, and that helps the clippers. You should feel like you're going through butter. It shouldn't be tuggy and it shouldn't be snatchy on the horse. You should just go all the way up. Maybe if your clippers are making that noise, it's probably not okay, but you know what I mean. So tensioning, this is what we were saying before. So read the manual. If you're anything like me, you love to cut the odd corner and you're not very good at reading manuals and how to do things, but it's really worth, because all the clippers are so different. So make sure that you do just familiarize yourself with them and run your clippers before you start clipping the horse. So you can see, I've taken this picture, you can see the blade, the bigger blade on the right, that's the blade that doesn't move, that goes on lasso, that's the blade that's against the horse. The blade on the left, you can see there it says A2 on it, means it's a medium, so that's the thickness that it cuts. That goes inside, and the little motor inside spins around, so that blade moves. And then the other bits that are on the floor, that's all part of the tensioning that we use. And they have a nut on them, a screw on the other side. And it can be really easy to over tighten the tension, but it's usually a sign of blunt blades. So if you start to over tighten the tension, the hair cuts a little bit shorter. So you tend to get more grease, but it blunts the blades even more. And then your clippers start to overheat. So if you see people that say, oh, my clippers are really hot, it's usually because the tension's too tight, which is usually because the blades are blunt, which sometimes, not always, because you do need to sharpen your blades very regularly. It's usually because there's dirt. And a question I get asked quite a lot is, how often do you need to sharpen your blades? And it's like a piece of string. It depends on the quality of the hair, it depends on how clean your horse is, it depends on how new the blades are, because every time they get sharpened, they take a little bit off that. So blades do have a shelf life, but you can, it depends on what size of clip you're doing as well. Like I would expect to get quite a few clips out of my own horse from a blade, because I know that I'm going in dirty. But when I clip professionally, sometimes I wouldn't even get one clip out of a set of blades, because you turn up and people just don't really care, to be honest. They just say, can we do that? So almost ready. Oh, I've got some chats, hang on, sorry. Oh, sorry, so I'm just seeing these at all. So it says, sorry, there was a reference to a picture of a dirty horse. I couldn't work out if it was on the slide. Sorry, it looked like a dirty window. No, it was actually on the horse, Penny. Someone just making the point that about being very dirty as well. Sorry, I should have explained that more. Right, so safety first. The reason I am telling you about safety, well, obviously everyone's very safety conscious, is because I have seen and heard of so many awful accidents clipping. It's so important to make sure that you are in a safe environment, your horse is safe and feels happy to do that. So we've got here a picture of me. I think you're in a reasonably compromised position, and the reason I've got my hand on her back, this is Betsy Legend. Betsy is fabulous to clip, always been great to clip, but the reason I've got my hand on her back is because you can feel the muscles on her back move before she moves her legs. So if she was to cow kick, I would feel it and be able to push myself away with my hand, hopefully before she connected with me. But you see people sitting on the floor and things like that doing legs. Always, if you're clipping a leg, always have a hand on the leg, because their movement will push you away from them. So it's just making sure that you are safe, you're in a safe, quiet environment. So if you know that your horse is an absolute nightmare around turnout time, don't clip them around turnout time. Do it at a time in the day when the yard's quiet, they're nice and relaxed. So do take into consideration the surroundings. I'm a massive fan of distractions. By distractions, I mean horse licks are brilliant. They are my clipping friend. So horse licks, hay nets, anything like that. If they need another horse standing tied up next to the stable, then that's absolutely, you know, that's fine. Things like wind make a difference, because if it's windy, the hair blows back in your face. That's why I've got a baseball cap on. I have this conversation a lot about wearing a hat. I would always say wear a hat, but I'm also not wearing a hat. So I like to clip in a baseball cap because it keeps the hairs out of my eyes so I can see more. But if you're new to clipping, to be fair, you should always wear a hat. Always wear a hat. Do as I say, not as I do. Sometimes you get in a situation where no matter how much you do, no matter how much you try and persevere with a horse, it's just not safe. And sometimes we need sedation. So that might be some oral sedation, so domesticin, or a Sedigel, or, you know, anything like that. Sometimes we need the vet out. I would say if you're not confident and your horse needs sedation, get somebody to clip, because that is when they are at their most dangerous, because they are so fast. They did a lot of clipping under sedation at the vets, and when they're under sedation they tend to panic kick, so they're really quick. You don't get any warning signs. And just remember, it's hair, it's not worth getting hurt over. Okay, so but always be honest with the person coming to clip your horse, because we've had that situation as well, which is not so good. But anyway, we've got a nice horse, we've got nice surroundings. Make sure the floor is dry as well. Many years ago I had a horse that started to move around on wet floor, trod on the cable, and well, obviously didn't electrocute, as in we didn't die, but we got a massive electric shock because the floor was wet. So never clip on wet floor. And just be aware that when the hair starts to fall on the floor, especially on like rubber matting or concrete, it gets really slippy really quickly. So it's a really good idea just to keep like brushing it out of the way a little bit, so we don't want you to be slippy, or obviously the horse to get slippy. Right, do's and don'ts. So we've got clippers, we've got a pony, we know what clip we're going to do, we've got a rugs prepped. Pony is, as you can see, hairy but has had a good brush, and we are going to start clipping. So we've got the first two pictures are don'ts. Okay, so don't approach the horse with the clippers at a right angle to the horse. That's going to hurt. So if a horse is tense, these big muscle groupings, they get really tense and they're like tied to elastic bands. So if you go in like at a right angle like that, the horse is going to tense and your clippers are going to bounce off, and immediately the horse has had a bad first experience. Okay, so then the horse is thinking, well, actually that hurt quite a lot. And if you touch the edge of the clippers yourself, they don't cut you, they won't cut into you, but they're quite sharp. So the teeth obviously have to be quite sharp. So you have to make sure you put them on nicely. So we always clip against the hair. So the picture in the middle, you can see there that would chew the hair. Okay, it wouldn't necessarily clip the hair, and it certainly wouldn't give you a nice flush clip. The one at the end is how we start to clip. So the clips are flat against the muscles. I think I've got a chat, hang on here. So, oh yeah, so do pop any questions as you think of them, and we'll ask when we get to the Q&A. Thank you. So yeah, do give me any questions at all. So we want the nice and flat to the horse. Now I think on next slide is so you can see here, don't stand that far away because the horse is thinking, what on earth are you doing? Stand next to the horse, and you can see that I've got my hand on her again, so I can feel, I can pat her, I'm stroking her, I can reassure her, I can tell her that she's brilliant and that she's perfectly safe, and give her a good tickle. So the next slide we've got, I think, is the video slide. So before I start it, this is how I would approach any horse, no matter how experienced the horse is, how experienced the person is. Okay, I'm just going to talk you through what I do, and then you'll be able to see it. So I would have the clippers running away from the horse. So you stood well away, so they're used to the noise. So you don't put the clippers, switch the clippers on directly on the horse. So I've stood away, and then go and walk over to the horse, and I would stroke her neck. Okay, just with my hand, so she's used to it, she knows that something is coming. So you're stroking down, and then I use my hand to put between the clippers and the horse. So my hand is flat and we put the clippers on and we're just running down the horse's neck and shoulder like that, because they feel the vibration. So some horses don't like the noise, some horses don't like the vibration, some horses don't care a jot. Okay, but it's just so they know. And then as soon as I feel that muscle, you can see the muscle on the shoulder. As soon as I know that that's relaxed and it's not like a tight elastic band, then I start clipping. So I'll just let you have a little, it's not very long, these videos, have a watch here. So you can see there it's a little bit glitchy, apologies for that, but you can see that, and if that process takes 5 minutes, that's totally okay. And at the start, you could see me just playing with the tension. With these liveryman ones, you can hear when the tensioning is correct on them. Not all of the clippers are like that, so it was just playing with the tension. Right, so getting straight lines. There's lots and lots of ways to do this. Some people like to draw on with chalk, some people like to draw on with saddle soap, some people like to put a number over the back. I like to follow the contours of the horse. Okay, so by that I mean here I can visualize where Betsy's number, so there's a saddle cloth, is going to come to, and I use a stifle to come up, and I just want the stifle to meet where I think the top of the number is going to, so the front of the number is going to come, and then I literally just clip. So we clip using long, nice long stroking movements against the direction of the hair. So I would clip Betsy's shoulder, and then I would clip partway up the neck. So horses tend not to like the heads in between their armpits and the stifles. That's usually the most ticklish bit. So I would say leave those bits until they're fully relaxed and they're fully, I would always do the head the last part of doing each side of the body. So I would clip one side, do the head, clip the other side, because that gives them a chance to go again, and then go back and do the head on the other side. And we're going to come to clipping heads in a minute, but this was done on one just line, clipper on all the way up the side and then around. So we're going to see that, hopefully, if you guys can see this and it doesn't glitch too much. So there you can see I'm going against the grain of the hair, so we've got the clippers and we just do one movement. All the way up. Again, sorry, that's a bit glitchy. So we can just see, and that forms the base of what we're going to do for the rest of the for the clip. Now, I would say you cannot see both sides at the same time. By that I mean, if you look at this, it might be an inch longer than on the other side, but nobody cares. Okay, so I'm not going to go up and up and up and up and keep making it shorter. I'm just going to leave it be, because does Betsy care? No. Do I care? No. Has she had a nice experience? Yes. Is she going to let me clip her again? Yes. Your clip should not take you any longer than about 45 minutes. And if it does, you need to take less off. And the reason for that is your horse will start getting cold, will start getting a little bit itchy, will start moving around. And for your job as a clipper handler, is to give them a nice experience, because the more times they have a nice experience, the more they will let you clip them. And if you get a horse that is really easy to clip, it takes no time at all. If you get one that's tricky, all of a sudden it becomes a bit of an issue, and it can be an expensive issue if you have to involve the vet as well. So clipping around the legs, again, I would always follow the muscle line. They've all have muscles on the legs. I don't pull their legs forwards to clip under their armpits. I always move the skin, just because I've had some under sedation. I had one, it was the most horrendous experience, where she was sedated. It was a very fine, thin chestnut mare. The horse absolutely just exploded out of nowhere. I was like sitting, well, I wasn't sitting obviously, but I was in this position underneath her, and she came down on top of the clippers and cut right into under her armpit, and I just vowed I would never ever put me or a horse in that position again. And that was when because we pulled her leg forward to try and do the folds of skin under. So now I never pull the legs forwards, I just move the skin. So I use one hand to move the skin and then clip and then move it back that way, which hopefully we'll be able to see in the video, even though they're not playing very well. The armpits, the skin where it wrinkles, it's really quite easy to nick them. So again, if you're not that confident, don't worry about it, just leave it. It's not the end of the world, okay? Or just go over the folds of skin. Don't press into them, don't dig down into them, just press over the folds of skin with the clippers, and it will just tidy them up. It does not have to be perfect at all. So we're going to see, hopefully we'll get a bit of a video. They're not playing very well, but here we go. Looks like I've got a lot of hand movements going on. So you can see the one movement to get that straight line, and then we just come at the front, and you can see with my left hand I'm just pulling the hair back to make the skin tauter, to stop it moving. And then I like to clip a little bit lower on the backs because they sweat there just behind the girth, and that's it. Literally takes a few seconds to do. So mane lines, this is always a bit of a tricky one. You can use them to shape the neck. I would always say be conservative. So if you want to start doing fancy things like mane blending, which is a technique we'll talk about next time, you need to clip to where I've clipped in the top picture. When I say be conservative, so you'll see where Betsy's really scurfy because she's had sweet itch over summer. So I don't want to go any closer than that to her mane on the bottom picture. That's quite close enough for that. The blending we use, so it basically blends your clipped hair into the hair that is longer, or into the mane, so that it leaves the effect that they've not been clipped. And you can do that with your mane, with your head, with the legs. Again, if it's a competition horse, fab. If you've got particularly hairy cob, great. For me, with Betsy, who's out doing pony club things and unaffiliated, like, I'm totally happy that she has this kind of clip on her mane. If you do nick the mane, don't panic, just leave it. Don't try and fix it, because I guarantee you'll take more off and then your pony will end up half hogged, and you don't probably want that. When I say can shape the neck, so see how Betsy's got a very weak just in front of the wither, just because of her way of going. You can use sometimes the shape of how you cut up the neck, how you clip up the neck, to hide things like that, or to enhance the crest. Again, with Betsy, like, we're not bothered, but if she was, for example, a show horse, we might, use that to just to play with the conformation a little bit. But be conservative, because don't forget, in a few months it will all be out anyway. Whereas if you shave half the mane off, it's going to take more than a few months to grow back, and if you have to plait, that is going to be a nightmare. Oh, apologies, my cat has just joined us as well. He's not a fan of clipping. Oh, he literally is joining us. Right, clipping heads. So be careful, obviously. This is a very sensitive area. If they don't like the noise, you can put cotton buds, like cotton wool balls in the ears to take away the noise. A lot of them don't like it around the ears. A lot of them don't like the vibration. So the chin groove, so under here where the lip meets the chin, so many of them hate that, and they will tolerate everything, but they hate this little bit here. And I think it's to do the vibration, because you're right, it's bone on straight onto the clippers. So if it is that there's a tiny little bit of hair here, just get the scissors and just remove it with the scissors after. I would say always, we'll show you in a minute, hopefully, with another glitchy video, but always keep your hand between the clippers and the eyes and ears. So by that I mean, if I've got my head here, I've got the clippers here, I've always got my hand there, so it just gives them the confidence that the hair is not blowing into the eyes, because a lot of them don't like it. So here you can see this hasn't been blended, but this is what blending would look like at the bottom. Like on her cheek, it's just because she's not grown a full winter coat yet. You can see she's hairier by her ears. Don't forget the new whiskers, so the removal of sensory hairs, so your whiskers, the hairs around the eyes and the inner ear hair is banned or recommended not to be removed with some governing bodies, depending on what rules you're clipping under. Personally, I've never liked the removal of whiskers myself, but I do trim them to a length where they don't get caught in tack if they're wearing a flash or a grackle, and the same with the sensory hairs around the eyes as well. So you can see Betsy's are quite long, but I wouldn't want them to be much longer because then they get caught in the cheek pieces. Again, that's everyone's personal preference. You know, when I used to work with horses, they wanted everything off: the legs, the head, the inner ear. Horses, when you clip in the ears, they're much better if you actually hold the ears. So if you hold them and use your clippers and move the clippers down and actually move the ear almost around, obviously it's attached, but move it round, and then it gives them a much better kind of experience with that, and you can use that to flatten it out because it's quite a big space. And if you do have access to some of the clippers like the Harmony Plus that we showed you at the beginning, they are brilliant for heads because they're so quiet and the vibrations are so minimal, but they clip. You can get the blades that clip on and they clip to the same length as the rest of your clips. So, you know, traditionally we had to clip heads and legs with these big heavy duty clippers, whereas now we don't. We have trimmers and the really light ones like the Harmony Plus, which are fabulous for doing things like that. Again, people used to say, oh, we need to stretch the head. Sometimes, especially if they're older, so you can see when I was clipping Betsy, her skin moves a bit. It's just because she's older. You know, like all of us, the skin gets a little bit taut as we get older. You can lift the heads up to do under the chins, but again, personally, I just like to move the skin with my hand, with my free hand, and go in like that, because I just think it's much. I've just had to do it so much with you know, on sedated horses who you don't want to move, that you just become quite used to that. So we're going to show a little video of clipping the head. So you can see I've already got my hand near her head collar there, and we'll have a look at the video. So you can see I've got my hands next to her ear, so she doesn't think for any second I'm coming near her ear. And I've got my hands going down the head. So as I'm going down her head, again, I'm just using the contours of the horse. So I'm just using her cheek line that comes down here to clip to, because then I know it's going to be straight with that. And then once we do that, just clip underneath. So again, from the chin groove back to towards the throat, but it's just being careful underneath the head. So ta-da! So that whole clip took about 15 minutes, but realistically in normal life, if you took 40 minutes to do that clip, that would be fine. You can take as long as you like, but if you've got a horse that if you've got a horse that's great and you're a little bit slow at clipping, just pop a rug over the quarters so that they don't start getting cold and then fidgety and everything else. So this is what we call the Liz clip. So she has got comes from the front of the saddle down to the stifle. I don't know what we'll name it. It doesn't really have a name. Some people call it an Irish clip, but as we saw on the first slide, everyone's got different names for different clips. But you can see we've got nice straight lines. Betsy was totally fine. This is always Betsy's resting face. We call it a resting Betsy face because she always looks like that unless there's food involved. She's had a nice time. She can have a brush, and after clipping, I always like to give them a nice brush and a hot cloth, and then put a cozier rug on them as well. And you'll always find that they tend to go out in the field and have a good roll. So brush well, hot cloth, super shine, get your rug on, clean your clippers and clean the hair away. cleaning your clippers, when you've clipped, you will feel so itchy. You've got itches in places that you shouldn't have itches, and you feel like, oh, but it's so important just to get your clippers clean, because that helps with the longevity as well. So if you've got clippers like the Lister or the Heinegger, any of the heavy duty ones, like the ones that you've seen, you'll need to actually take the heads, take the blades off, get a good brush and clean all the way inside them. So just like a flicky brush is brilliant for that. So the little brushes that they provide with the clippers, rubbish, don't even bother with them. So when you're clipping, get like a plastic body brush. That's great, because you need to constantly be oiling your clippers and keeping them clean of hair as well. So one of the like plastic body brushes are absolutely brilliant for that. Keep them separate, because once you get oil on them, so if you have a separate end, one for the top of your clippers and one for the air vents as well, if you use the oily end on the air vents, then it just clogs up, because it gets obviously the oil on the vents. So keep your vents clean, keep the clippers clean. I would say you probably need to, for a clip like that, if you brushed your clippers off twice during that clip, that would be fine. And again, oiled them twice, that would be absolutely fine. So you want to oil, you can hear when they need oil as well. But cleaning your clippers is really important, and make sure, and I'm saying this because I have actually done this because I'm very special, make sure your clippers are switched off, not connected to any electricity before you clean in the middle, because I did not do that once and lost a big chunk, you can't really see it in this light, of the top of my finger when I was 13. So again, do as I say, not as I do. Clean the hair away while you're already hairy, because I guarantee that when you've had a shower, you won't want to come back and redo anything with the hair. Yeah, and then go and get yourself a cup of tea and admire your handiwork. So clipper art, I sit on the fence for clipper art. When I used to clip a lot, we didn't have any of the trimmers and the things like that we do now, and people used to say, oh, could you do a love heart in the horse's bum? And yes, that's absolutely fine, because it's actually quite, it's quite easy to do. But the clipper art's really like intricate now. So you can see the one on the left, which is just fabulous, like a really autumnal one, because it's done properly. And then you see the one on the right, and not only is the clip a really questionable clip, the clipper art in that. So my kind of advice would be, unless you can do it properly, unless you're really confident at clipping to start, maybe leave that to the experts. But you can see the horse on the left, the difference between the base clip compared to the one on the right, because the pony on the left is clean, the one on the right is dirty, and all these lines that you can see in the coat is because people haven't had an even pressure when they clip. So when you use the clippers, you want to make sure you've got a nice even pressure. So you don't want to be digging in, and you don't want it to be heavy. You just want the clippers to lie flat along the skin, and you just run the clippers. So your arm shouldn't ache or hurt or anything like that. It should just be running the clippers through. Having said that, if you don't hold them on tight enough, they kind of bounce off. So it's a nice amount of pressure, similar to holding your reins, that kind of nice amount of pressure that you'd have that feel in your hand. You want to feel the contact, you want to feel the clippers, but you don't want your arms to ache. Okay, but equally, it shouldn't be like washing lines, it shouldn't be flapping around as well. So we want to make sure that we've got a nice amount of pressure with that. If it goes wrong, my first clip I started to do, I had no idea what I was doing, no idea. It was just me and the pony with my very first trusty set of clippers. Actually didn't have a clue what I was doing, didn't know about oiling, didn't know about cleaning them, didn't know about just didn't know. So I thought, I know I'm going to do a blanket clip, because why not? Because I think they look cool. Actually, now I hate blanket clips. I think they're like the worst kind of clip to try and do, because no matter what you do, you can, like, it takes ages to make them level. So I'm not a massive blanket clip fan. But anyway, I was going to do a blanket clip. I did one side, it was awful. The poor horse looked like someone had done it with a knife and fork, because there was bull bits, there was long, it was just awful. And it kept getting higher and higher and higher and higher. In the end, I ended up doing a hunter clip. I didn't have the correct rugs for her, so I had to go home and get my duvet off my bed, and my mum and dad went mental because my horse had my duvet on. Like, it was just awful. My biggest piece of advice is give it a go and don't worry. And if it totally goes wrong, don't try and fix it. Ask someone to help, because the chances are they will be able to fix it. And I hate this saying because of my job and what I do, but the difference between a good clip and a bad clip is probably 2 weeks. So really, like, you know, if you're going to clip, don't clip before you go to like a national championships for your first time. Give yourself a couple of weeks, and then before, and if it goes wrong, get someone else in just to go over it. Okay, so don't worry, just have a go. And the more you do it, the more confident you become, and the easier like it is. So I feel like I've done a lot of talking. I could talk for a long time about clipping. I'm quite passionate, sorry. But I don't, has anyone got any questions?
Thank you, Liz. I love your chilled, laid-back approach to everything. It's just brilliant. It makes me go, oh, that's all right. But now I realise exactly. But now I realise why my horse looks like he does sometimes. I don't do the front bit and do the brushing enough.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. Like, the preparation really is key to the finish, and it's really difficult this time of year because they've changed the coats, and they, you know, you think, oh, my horse is quite clean, but actually, like, when you get down in there, they've got to be like a really good, you know, rubber curry comb and lift it all, and then a dandy brush, then a body brush, and then a polishing brush, and then a hot cloth, and then they'll be clean, you know. Yeah. But it's really tricky at this time of year because they're constantly muddy, they're changing coats, they're in rugs that are probably dirty on the inside because they're changing coats and throwing grease. So but it does make a big difference to the to the finish.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, feel free to type in any questions or stick your hand up if you've got any and you want us to unmute you, and you can ask them away. Quick question though, Liz, this one's from me, and then we've got a couple that were sent in. Hot clothing, do you always go in the direction of the coat, or do you can mix it up?
Yeah, if I'm hot clothing to lift grease, I do like a rubber curry comb, so like give it a good old scrub. You don't want it too wet. If it's too wet, because the hair is kind of waterproof, it just runs off. So you want it damp so it ruffles the hair, not runs off the hair. But give it especially like the bums, the crest, the shoulders, the areas that, you know, would get greasy. If you're doing it for shine, so for example, if you were going to a show and you wanted it as a polisher, so we would use a polishing brush like a goat brush, and then wipe over with a hot cloth, and I would wipe in the direction of the hair. Again, it shouldn't it should lift the dust, but you shouldn't look like, if you're doing it in that situation, you shouldn't be able to tell that you've run anything wet over it because you wring your cloth out really well. So yeah, if it's for lifting grease, give it a good old scrub. If it's for polishing, flat.
In the direction. Perfect, thank you. That was my question. We had a couple sent in that you've already answered. We're around, I think it was someone was asking about difficult bits, but someone asked specifically about difficult bits underneath the chest. Mm-hmm. So you talked about the leg. Any top tips for doing under the chest?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. I would always do the chest as I'm doing the leg. So I stopped the video, which was probably a bit annoying at the wrong time when we did Betsy's leg, but I didn't want to leave it too long. But from there, I would carry on and do the chest on that side, and then I would do the chest on the other side when I did the leg. And then as I would go to the front and just kind of look and see, you sometimes find that there's like one little strip of hair. But I would always clip from behind, never stand in front of the chest and try and clip up. I would stand behind the shoulder and the leg and do it from there. Okay. Some horses that are very narrow, it's really tricky. Like Betsy, I'm quite lucky with Betsy because she's so wide, so you can fit the clippers through. If they're narrow, then I would just get the folds of the hair when they're standing underneath the armpits and just pull them ever so gently, pull them taut, and then it moves the hair in the middle of the chest. So you can just then get your clippers to it. But I would say don't faff under their arms. Like, you know, it's quite easy to nick them under there. So, and actually no one can ever see under there. No one is ever going to sit under your horse and say, you missed 3 hairs under the chest. That's terrible. Like, they don't. And we get really, I think, sometimes, because we're very proud of our horses and we invest a lot of time and money and energy and we want it to be perfect. But the reality is it doesn't matter, because perfection in 2 weeks is completely different. And it's much better that you're safe, that you don't cut your horse, that your horse is safe and had a nice time. And I would rather see someone that's got a line up the chest, but the horse has had a great experience, than someone that has got a knife and fork clip and the horse is now petrified of clippers and needs someone like me and a vet. So it's going to cost you probably £160 to have 1 clip, as opposed to a 10-minute nice experience where they've had a horse licks, but they've got like the hair that much under the chest. You know, you've got to balance it up. But yeah, it's it can be quite hard to know when to stop when you start clipping. It's like,
Definitely.
take
Definitely.
a step back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the shapes and the different patterns and what have you at the start. And I think the picture of the hunter clip had the saddle. And the question we had beforehand was, when you're doing a hunter clip, should you leave a saddle patch or not? Does it matter?
Again, it depends on the horse. I never leave like the numbness shape that was on there. Just pinch that off the internet because I'm not very good at drawing. I personally would never leave that, but sometimes I do leave the bit on the back. If it was a 4-year-old that was coming in and ridiculously hairy and, you know, needed to be clipped for whatever reason, I would always leave a patch so that, you know, just in case they're a little bit cold backed or struggling with saddles or anything like that. Any horse that is a little bit sensitive on their skin, I would leave a patch, not necessarily the whole kind of numbner shape, but just a patch on the back. But if they're fine and their coats are good, their skin's good, like, I would just whack it off. It doesn't make, it's no difference really than them having a summer coat.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Another question from tonight. Any tips for heels?
Oh yeah, we haven't done legs. We're going to do legs next time actually. But yeah, pick your horse's legs up. So when so I would always clip down to their knee with the legs on the floor. So just past the knee with the legs on the floor. When the legs are on the floor, because of the pressure on the tendons and the ligaments, it's like clipping really tight elastic bands, and if you cut into that, that's quite problematic. Whereas if you pick them up, they go all floppy, so then when you run your clippers over them, it's just like clipping onto the muscle rather than onto anything tight. So it allows your clippers to go through, and your heels are the same. So because your clippers are quite, you know, they're quite big, again, something like the Harmony Plus would be much easier for clipping legs and heels with. But I would always pick up the leg, have obviously my leg in one hand, and then actually just move the hoof slightly, obviously not move the hoof, but extend the hoof down a little bit so it opens up the back of the heel, and then, or like clip into the heel like that. So I would clip round one way and then clip round the other, and then I've still got hold of the leg, and I would clip under like that, the coronet band to the front of the leg as well, because again, if they start twitching, you've got much more control, you know, where the legs are. So I would clip their entire legs with them held up and going against the grain. But again, like, the little clippers are so much easier to use. Like, those Harmony Plus ones are just like a godsend. They're so easy in comparison. But you know, when I was learning to clip, we didn't have the luxury of all these extra clippers, and not everyone can afford extra clippers. Like, I wouldn't, you know, if I hadn't been lucky enough to have those to demo and then use, I wouldn't have them. I would just have one set of clippers, because most people only have, you know, one set of clippers, so you have to use what you have. But yeah, pick the legs up and go against the grain, and don't get kicked, preferably.
And when would you clip legs and when would you not clip legs? When do they need clipping, do you think?
For me, if I've got a horse who has got like a dermatitis, so something under the skin going on that has gone past the point of return with mud fever or lice, or there's a medical reason, I would always clip legs out. For me, I never clip my pony's legs out because they live out in a field. Well, at the moment they're still out all the time, but they come in at night over winter. But I want to know that they're okay in the field, and the hair acts as a bit of a protection and a bit of a barrier. Having said that, if I was going off onto the sunshine tour, which clearly, like, I'm not, then I would clip out, you know, because I want it to be smart. But clearly then they're not going to be standing in, you know, fetlock deep mud. So again, it's a personal preference. You can clip, I quite like clipping like the heels and around the back of the fetlocks and the feathers to smarten them up. That's the only time that I would clip against, in the direction of the hair, because then it leaves it longer and it's easier to blend in. So it's, you can neaten the legs up without needing to clip them out. But if you've got a particularly hairy, heavy cob, you might just want to do it for aesthetic, you know, reasons. And actually they're a lot easier to manage if the feather is not, you know, if you've got a very traditional heavy cob, it can be a lot easier to manage that. So yeah, then I would take the legs off.
Brilliant, thank you. You talked about the clip, when the clippers sometimes grabbing the hair, but how do you know when your clippers are sharp enough versus or need a resharpen? Is that it? Yeah.
No, you should feel like they just run and it's smooth. If your clippers start to chew the hair, then either your tension is wrong or your clippers are not tight, so your blades are not sharp enough. So if you know you've got a fresh set of blades on and it's chewing the hair, you know it's your tensioning. If your clippers have been clipping brilliantly, and then all of a sudden they start to struggle, I would always give them a brush, because sometimes it's because some of the dirt and the grease and the little hairs are stuck between the two blades. So give them a good brush, make sure your vents are clear, give them an oil, try them on a bit that's already been clipped to get the oil just working through them, and then go back and try it again. And if it's still, it's okay to tighten your tension a little bit, like, but you know, you see some people that, when I say a little bit, have gone like 4 turns and the clippers are going, you know, and then they get hot, and that's actually, you know, it's really damaging your clippers, and your clip will be terrible as well. So actually, when I was clipping Betsy, those clippers are on their last clip, because you can see that they've started to leave ever so slight little lines in the coat. So I know, clipping Betsy, even though they didn't pull at the hair, at no point did they say I can't clip this horse. I can see by the tiny little lines that they've left in the coat, these clippers I need to change. Blades I need to change. So yeah, would always do that.
Okay. How many clips did you get out of a set of blades?
It depends on the horse. So like if I was doing the clip that I did on Betsy, and they were, so you're not doing like the rumps, which are, you know, quite greasy. I'm not doing a full head. I'm not doing legs really blunt them, just because it's really tricky to get all the hair out. And they were a new set of blades, you probably get 5, 6, 7 clips out of those. But if Betsy was really sweaty, so if you give them sedation, they sweat quite a lot. So we didn't cover clipping under sedation on this one, but if you do clip under sedation, you've got to clip the bits that sweat the most first, because otherwise it's awful, because they sweat naturally with sedation. And clip the heads when the most, you know, sedated. But yeah, so in that situation I would expect them to be less. I'd probably get two full clips out of those blades if they were like normal. But I've been to horses where they're really hairy and they're wet and they're damp underneath the skin, and you can do half a clip and think I need to change these blades, which is really frustrating from somebody that, like, you know, you always ask for the horse to be quite clean, but at the end of the day, it's for, you know, it's for the horse, and you're not going to walk away because you've used a set of blades on them. So yeah, and as we said before, it just depends on how old your blades are as well. So I've got some blades that have probably been sharpened 20 times, but those blades wouldn't last as long as a set of new blades, just because of the every time they sharpen them, they obviously take just this little tiny bit off, but every time they do that, it's a tiny bit that's not cutting. So you know, it just depends, yeah, on the horse.
And Liz, if it's taken a little bit longer than expected and perhaps the blades have started to warm up, will swapping blades just help give you a little bit more time and comfort?
Yeah, definitely. So if you feel like your clippers are getting a bit warm, then yeah, swapping blades definitely will help. Just check your tensioning as well. Your tensioning on the Heinegers can be a little bit trickier than on like your Liveryman or your Lister. On your Liveryman and Lister, you can usually hear the motor when the motor changes as well. But it's so important just to read that. But yeah, absolutely. And that will give you what actually probably is more beneficial than swapping your blades is taking the blades off to clean inside the clippers, because that takes any grease, hair, bits of scurf that's, you know, clogging it up, that makes the machine have to work a little bit harder. But do make it so easy mid-clip to think, I've just got to swap these blades. Make sure they're not plugged in. It hurts a lot.
I put a story up on Instagram about asking what were the things that people found frustrating about clipping, and Ben Atkinson of Atkinson Action Horses, it happens to the best of us, and they've got about 52 horses there, messaged and said it's when you run out of battery halfway through clipping your horse. So it even happens to him.
100%. Yeah, the ones I like, the ones the Black Beauty ones, because they've got a mains adapter with them, so if you run out of battery halfway through, you can plug it into the mains and carry on, which I think is really, really useful. You know, we've moved on so much from the corded kind of clipper days, and that, you know, we would have had a whole section probably about you know, managing horses with your cords and where you know, your extension lead should be, and your circuit breakers and everything else. But it's definitely make sure that you, if you're clipping a lot, you've got your battery charged and a spare one. If you're just clipping one, just make sure that it's charged. But you know, the reality is, like, if you put your battery on charge for half an hour, went and had a cup of tea, and your horse had a hay net and a break, it's not the end of the world. Like, it just give yourself time, so that, you know, I would be annoyed if that clip took me more than 15 minutes because I've done thousands of horses. But for people that are starting the first time, give yourself an hour, you know, like, just give yourself time and have someone there that, you know, is kind of a bit more confident and knowing what they're doing, and put the kettle on and just enjoy learning. It's not, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna, you know, you're not gonna put your horse in the vets because it's got a clip that's 1 centimetre higher on the other side. And it's not, it doesn't matter.
Brilliant. That's fantastic advice again. Thank you very much, Liz. I think we're through the questions we had before. I think we're through the questions for the guys tonight. So unless anyone types something really, really quickly, I think it's time to say thank you. That was amazing again, and really, really helpful. Just really, yeah, really useful, really down to earth, fabulous advice. So thank you, Liz.
Thank you very much for having me again, ladies. And on the next one, we'll be a bit more in depth as to how to clip legs and blending, and how to clip heads and things like that. So yeah, hopefully you guys all want to come back for a round 2 of clipping. I'm a little bit excited about clipping, so apologies.
That's brilliant. And we're doing that one for the last clip, aren't we? So sort of in January time, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
that one?
Yeah.
Brilliant. If you just pop onto the next slide and just tell people what's coming up next. Oh yeah, sorry, discount.
Sorry. Forgot
forgot that.
that you ladies have got them. Yeah.
So we've been supported several times, well, every time that you've done a webinar, by the lovely Smart Grooming, and they also have Clipper Sharp as an organisation as well, which they stock lots of different brands of clipper, so it's not just the one. And so they've given us, especially for the horse tribe, 10% off everything on Smart Grooming at the moment. So use it quickly using Groom 10. You've got until midnight this Sunday, so you can spend your weekend online shopping. And if you want something from Clipper Sharp, they've also given another offer of free express postage, which can often cost quite a lot, actually. I think it's like £12 £13 normally with most companies. So if you use code HorseTribe for that, and you can check everything out at smartgrooming.com or clippershop.com.
Can I just say, which is really naughty, but the Super Shine from Smart Grooming will be the best money you've ever spent, like ever in your life, and 10% off. You might as well just order 3 because it's brilliant, brilliant stuff. It's really good.
And Liz isn't sponsored by Smart Grooming.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't say it if I didn't use it. Genuinely, it's in my grooming kit, it's in my show kit, it's in Eloise's grooming kit, because I'm like, oh, I love it for everything. I love it for the tails, love it for the hot clothing, love it for the finishing bits. Like it's fab stuff. So yeah, well worth using the 10% off as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, just onto the last idea. So just things that are coming up. Next Thursday, Sue Dyson is coming back. So this is her 4th webinar, the 4th in the series that she's doing for us at the moment. And this is about understanding the impact of tack fit and rider position on the horse. So it's really, really fascinating, not just how well your tack fits, but how you know your tack, whether your horse is comfortable by some of the behaviours it might show when you're tacking up. And then the impact of the rider on the horse. And we heard a little bit from Russell Dwyer before about impact of rider on the horse as well. So I think that will link in really nicely. And then on the 28th, we've got Simon Kokoza, whose book, Poor Conditioning of the Horse, is really in vogue at the moment, to the point where you can't buy it anywhere. And he's going to be talking about basically how to help your horse develop their core muscles so that they can carry us more effectively, given that we sit in the weakest part of their backs. And I've been on a course with him, so I have to say it's brilliant the way he talks about this, and it's really, really down to earth, and something that any rider, if I can do it, any rider can do it. So that'll be really exciting as well. So yeah, feel free to sign up for those. And I think that's it.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, Liz. I love that picture.
Thank you again, ladies. That was fun, and yeah, thank you for having me back again.
No worries. Thanks very much. And if you just as you click out of the webinar, there'll be a questionnaire. So if you quickly fill that in, that would be brilliant, and it really help us with our future webinars. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Bye, Liz. Bye.
Bye. Bye.